Most folks can glance at a map and spot Ireland right away, no problem. But ask them why that one island is chopped into two different countries, and you'll get a lot of blank stares. Down south and west, you've got the Republic of Ireland, fully independent, its own president, its own euro coins, its own seat at the UN. Up in the northeast corner sits Northern Ireland, still very much part of the United Kingdom, sharing a monarch, a parliament at Westminster, and a passport with England, Scotland, and Wales. A wiggly 500-kilometer, 310-mile border snakes between the two. These days you can drive across it without even noticing. No checkpoints, no passport stamps since the peace deal. But that invisible line still carries the weight of a century of arguments, grief, hope, and a whole lot of blood. That border wasn't drawn by ancient kings or medieval mapmakers. It only appeared in 1921, barely 100 years ago. Yet everything that led to it stretches back thousands of years. Waves of newcomers, foreign armies, religious wars, land grabs, famines so terrible they're still whispered about like family curses, rebellions that failed and rebellions that half succeeded, and finally a messy peace that's holding, touch wood, but still feels fragile. The story of Ireland is basically one long argument about who gets to decide what happens on this rainy, green rock in the Atlantic, and whether the whole place should ever be run as one home again. Let's start way back, before anybody wrote anything down. Around 10 or 12,000 years ago, after the ice finally melted, the first hunter-gatherers paddled or walked over and made the island their home. They built these incredible stone tombs. Newgrange is the most famous one, older than the pyramids, with a passage that lights up on the winter solstice like it's got its own alarm clock. We don't know what language they spoke or what stories they told their kids at night, but they left behind circles of standing stones and burial mounds that still make you stop and wonder. Then, somewhere between 600 and 400 BC, a new crowd shows up, the Celts of the Iron Age. They bring sharper swords, better chariots, swirling knot patterns on jewelry and shields, and, most importantly, their language. Over the next few hundred years, that language morphs into what we call Irish Gaelic, and it blankets the whole island. By the time the Romans are busy building roads and baths across Britain, Ireland is a patchwork of maybe 150 tiny kingdoms. Each one has its own petty king, its own cattle herds, because cows were basically money back then, its own hill fort. Every so often a really strong or lucky ruler gets called High King, and everyone pretends to listen to him at Tara, but real power stays local. Poets and storytellers are rock stars in this society. They remember the genealogies, settle arguments with clever verses, keep the myths alive. Druids are the real power behind the throne. Priests, judges, astronomers, political advisors all rolled into one. Life is cattle raids, feasts, epic poems about heroes like Cuchulainn, and a religion full of gods who live in trees, rivers, and hilltops. Here's the wild part. The Romans never bothered invading. They conquered Britain up to Hadrian's Wall and called it a day. Ireland stayed outside the empire. So Gaelic ways, laws, and customs survived untouched while most of Europe got Romanized, then fell apart when Rome collapsed. Around the 5th century, Christianity starts leaking in across the Irish Sea. Some say merchants and slaves brought it. Others point to missionaries. Tradition hands the starring role to St. Patrick, a Briton captured by Irish raiders as a teenager, escapes, trains as a priest, comes back, and converts thousands. True or half legend. By the 600s and 700s, the island is solidly Christian. Monasteries pop up everywhere, not just for prayer, but as schools, libraries, scriptoriums, and art studios. While continental Europe is dealing with barbarian invasions and lost knowledge, Irish monks are copying Virgil, Plato, the Bible, and their own old sagas onto beautiful vellum pages. The Book of Kells is probably the most famous, pages glowing with color, animals twisting into letters, Celtic spirals everywhere. Irish monks sailed to Scotland, England, France, even Iceland, setting up monasteries and basically helping keep Western learning alive through the so-called Dark Ages. All that gold, silver, colorful manuscripts, and well-fed monks eventually catch the wrong kind of attention. From about 795 onward, Viking dragon ships start hitting the coasts. First, it's smash and grab raids. Burn the monastery, grab the chalices, take some captives to sell as slaves, sail home. But the Vikings are smart traders too. By the 840s and 850s they're staying. They build fortified bases that grow into proper towns. Dublin, Waterford, Wexford, Cork, Limerick. Suddenly Ireland has real urban centers for the first time. Dublin becomes one of the biggest slave markets in Western Europe. Captives from Ireland, Scotland, England get shipped to Scandinavia, the Arab world, you name it. The Norse link the island into a trade web that reaches from Newfoundland to Baghdad. They never take over the whole interior, though. Gaelic kings keep fighting back. After generations of back and forth, the turning point comes in 1014. High King Brian Boru faces a coalition of Vikings and their Irish allies at Clontarf near Dublin. Brian's side wins, but he gets killed in his tent after the battle. Viking political power in Ireland is finished, even if their blood and their towns stay behind. Some Norse families blend in, speak Irish, marry locals, become Hiberno-Norse. The island gets a breather. Trade picks up, towns grow, but it's still a patchwork of squabbling lords. Fast forward to the late 1100s. One Leinster king, Dermot MacMurrough, loses his throne in a family fight and asks for help from across the water. A group of Anglo-Norman adventurers, tough, land-hungry knights, land in 1169 under Richard Strongbow de Clare. They win battles, marry into Irish royalty, grab huge chunks of land. The King of England, Henry II, panics. My vassals are building their own kingdom over there. So in 1171, Henry sails over with an army, makes everyone swear loyalty to him, and declares himself Lord of Ireland. Over the next couple of centuries, Norman barons push west and north, building stone castles, setting up feudal manors. The area they really control is called the Pale, roughly Dublin and a strip around it. Everywhere else, Gaelic chiefs still rule. But something funny happens. Cut off from England, surrounded by Irish speakers, lots of those Norman families slowly go native. They learn Irish, wear Irish clothes, follow Irish law, marry Irish women. English officials later call them degenerate English, or more Irish than the Irish themselves. In 1366, the government tries to stop it with the Statutes of Kilkenny, banning the Irish language, Irish dress, intermarriage. Almost nobody listens. By the 1400s, English power has shrunk back to the Pale and a few towns. Gaelic lords are stronger than ever in Ulster, Connaught, most of Munster. Then the Tudors arrive in the 1500s, and everything gets much harsher. Henry VIII breaks with the Pope, starts the English Reformation, wants Ireland to follow. Most Irish, Gaelic, and Old English, the Norman descendants, stay Catholic and say no thanks. Henry upgrades himself from Lord to King of Ireland in 1541 and begins a serious conquest. The method is simple and brutal. Offer submission and English titles or lose your land. When people fight back, the land gets confiscated and handed to loyal Protestants. Plantations start, first small ones in Leinster and Munster, then the big one. The decisive moment comes at the end of the century. Hugh O'Neill, the powerful Earl of Tyrone, leads a 9-year war, 1594 to 1603, that almost succeeds. He wins big battles, gets Spanish troops and ships, nearly drives the English out. But in 1601, they lose at Kinsale. O'Neill surrenders in 1603. In 1607, he and most of the other Ulster lords sail away to Europe, the famous Flight of the Earls. Gaelic Ireland's leadership is gone. Now the English crown can do what it wants. The biggest change is plantation on a massive scale. From 1609 onward in Ulster, huge estates are taken from Gaelic owners and given to Protestant settlers, mostly Lowland Scots, Presbyterians, and English Anglicans. New towns spring up or get English names. Derry becomes Londonderry because London companies put up the money. By the 1640s, tens of thousands of British settlers live in Ulster, creating a permanent Protestant bloc in what used to be the most Gaelic part of the island. Resentment boils over. In 1641, while England is tearing itself apart in civil war, Irish Catholics rebel, trying to take back land. Some Protestant settlers are killed. The stories get exaggerated in England. Fear spreads. When Oliver Cromwell wins the English Civil War, he turns to Ireland in 1649. His campaign is merciless. Drogheda and Wexford see massacres that are still remembered with horror. By 1653, Catholic land ownership has crashed from about 60% to maybe 8 to 10%. The new Protestant landlord class is born, and it will run the show for the next 2.5 centuries. The last big 17th century war comes after the 1688 revolution in England. Catholic James II loses his throne. Most Irish Catholics back him, hoping for better days. William of Orange, Protestant, invades. Battles at the Boyne, 1690, Aughrim and Limerick, 1691, end with William's victory. The Treaty of Limerick promises Catholics religious freedom and property rights. Those promises are broken almost immediately. A whole battery of penal laws follows. Catholics can't vote, can't sit in parliament, can't hold office, can't own a horse worth more than £5, can't send kids to Catholic schools, can't even buy land freely. The island is ruled by a tiny Anglican Protestant elite, the ascendancy, who own the big estates and pull every string. The 1700s are calmer than the previous bloody centuries, but the inequality is crushing. Catholics and Presbyterians, who also face some discrimination, are second-class citizens. Still, new ideas creep in. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, they make people think. In 1782, Henry Grattan gets the Irish Parliament some real independence from London. Then in 1791, a group called the United Irishmen starts in Belfast. Protestants, Catholics, dissenters, all together want democracy, reform, maybe even independence. In 1798, they rise up. Wolfe Tone is the figurehead. The rebellion is smashed, especially brutal in Wexford. Tone is captured, cuts his own throat in prison rather than be hanged, becomes a legend. The British answer is drastic. The Act of Union in 1801. The Irish Parliament is shut down. Ireland is fully absorbed into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Many see it as the last nail in the coffin of any Irish self-rule. The early 1800s bring one big win. Daniel O'Connell's campaign forces Catholic emancipation in 1829. Catholics can finally vote and sit in Westminster. But then disaster hits. From 1845 to 1852, the potato crop fails year after year because of blight. Ireland's population is over 8 million. Most are poor laborers who eat almost nothing but potatoes. 1 million people starve or die of disease. Another million immigrate, mostly to the United States, Canada, Britain, Australia. While people are dying by the roadside, food grown in Ireland keeps being shipped out because of market rules and landlord debts. British relief efforts are slow, stingy, sometimes downright callous. The Great Famine in Gortamore destroys destroys the old Gaelic-speaking rural world, kills the Irish language in huge areas, and plants a deep generational anger toward London. After the famine, nationalism grows in different forms. Charles Stewart Parnell and later John Redmond push for home rule, self-government inside the UK. A home rule bill finally passes in 1914, but gets suspended because World War I starts. Over 200,000 Irishmen fight in the British Army anyway, most as volunteers. But in April 1916, a small revolutionary group decides the war is the perfect cover. Patrick Pearse, James Connolly, and others seize buildings in Dublin. Read the proclamation of the Irish Republic. The Easter Rising lasts 6 days. British artillery flattens parts of the city. At first, lots of Dubliners are angry at the rebels for the destruction. Then the British execute 15 leaders. Public opinion flips overnight. Those dead men become martyrs. Sinn Féin wins a landslide in the 1918 election. Instead of going to London, the MPs set up their own parliament, Dáil Éireann, and declare independence. The Irish Republican Army starts a guerrilla war, ambushes, hit-and-run attacks. The British send in the black and tans and auxiliaries. Reprisals get ugly. By 1921, both sides are worn out. A truce leads to talks in London. The Anglo-Irish Treaty of December 1921 ends the fighting, but at a terrible price. Partition. 26 counties become the Irish Free State, a dominion like Canada or Australia. The 6 northeastern counties, with a Protestant/Unionist majority, stay in the UK as Northern Ireland. The treaty splits the movement. Pro-treaty people, Michael Collins and others, accept it as the best deal possible. Anti-treaty people, Eamon de Valera and much of the old IRA, reject it, especially the oath to the British Crown and the partition. Civil war breaks out in 1922. It's vicious, brother against brother. Collins is assassinated in 1922. The pro-treaty side wins by 1923. The Free State survives. Over the next decades, the South cuts ties with Britain step by step. The 1937 Constitution renames the country Ireland and removes the king from domestic affairs. In 1949, it becomes the Republic of Ireland and leaves the Commonwealth. Northern Ireland, meanwhile, is run as a one-party unionist state for 50 years. Catholics face routine discrimination, gerrymandered voting districts, worse housing, fewer jobs in the civil service. By the late 1960s, Catholics start peaceful civil rights marches inspired by Martin Luther King and the American movement. They're met with police batons, water cannons, and in January 1972, Bloody Sunday, British paratroopers shoot dead 13 unarmed marchers in Derry. The troubles explode. For 30 years, it's a grinding, ugly conflict. The Provisional IRA's pubs, army bases, London shops, says it's fighting for a united Ireland. Loyalist groups, UVF, UDA, shoot Catholics in retaliation. British soldiers patrol, sometimes collude, sometimes shoot first. More than 3,600 people die. Civilians, paramilitaries, police, soldiers. The violence touches England and the Republic too. By the mid-1990s, almost everyone is exhausted. Secret talks, pressure from America. Senator George Mitchell chairs the negotiations. Ceasefires in 1994 from both the IRA and Loyalists. Finally, on Good Friday 1998, the agreement is signed. Northern Ireland stays British unless and until a majority votes to join the Republic. Nationalists get recognition of their Irish identity, dual citizenship, cross-border bodies. Most important, power-sharing government at Stormont. Unionists and nationalists have to run it together. Since then, the place has changed beyond recognition. Belfast and Derry are tourist cities now, full of murals that tell both sides of the story, new hotels, tech jobs. The Republic went from one of Western Europe's poorest countries in the 1980s to the Celtic tiger boom of the 1990s, 2000s, massive wealth, then a brutal crash in 2008, then recovery again. The border is still there on paper, but in daily life, it's almost invisible. People cross for work, shopping, football matches, family visits. And the old dream, reunification, isn't laughed at anymore. Polls show more people, especially younger ones, thinking a border poll might happen in their lifetime. Nobody knows what the numbers would be if it ever came. But after everything, centuries of conquest, plantations, penal laws, famine, civil war, 30 years of bombs and bullets, the fact that the conversation is even serious tells you something about the stubborn hope that's always run through Irish history. Ireland's past is heartbreaking and heroic at the same time. Pain and pride are so tangled up you can't separate them. And maybe, just maybe, the next big chapter will be written not by armies or treaties, but by ordinary people on both sides of that fading line deciding they'd rather share the island than keep arguing over it. We'll see.